Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new edition of Low-Code Café, episode 69. Today, we'll be continuing our series on the replacing legacy applications. But before that, let me introduce myself and this event. My name is Bogdan Litescu. I'm the founder and owner of Plant an App. And this is a community event we are doing every week at the same hour, same day. And we get together to showcase new capabilities coming in Plant an App. We showcase techniques that we learn on our support channel. And the biggest chunk is the hands-on part where we usually build systems with Plant an App, like in the case today, where we continue our series on legacy applications. This event is being recorded, and then all past recordings are on our YouTube channels. So there's 68 hours of very interesting content about building with Plant an App. So I recommend you visit the channel, subscribe, turn on notifications to stay updated. Besides this series with the Low-Code Cafe, there's other series in our YouTube channels. There's Feature Focus, which is shorter 5-minute videos showcasing various features or techniques. There's also other training videos. There's Campfire videos. So lots of content to learn from. So one announcement to make today, since next week will be Thanksgiving, we'll not hold this webinar, so we'll skip 1 week. And then also for Christmas, we are preparing a special edition like we did last year. I invite you to come and see Dale, Santa Dale again. And finally, on the 29th, we'll not hold any webinar between Christmas and New Year. Let's enjoy some vacation. So we come with fresh resources back in the new year. So the agenda for today is I will give you some very important news about the product, and then I will pass it to Dale Warner, our head of support, to give us some stories from the trenches, followed by the continuation of migrating the legacy application, which today will be a lot about building the customer-facing or the end-user-facing front end of the application. Okay, so my part will not be long. Just note that we are launching 1.17 today. It has a couple of known issues. It has 2 known issues, but they have workarounds and they are small in nature. And those known features, one is related to ability to import automation jobs, so sharp scheduler jobs, but there is a workaround to change the name in JSON, so that will be documented. And the other one is related about infobox. Sometimes it throws JavaScript errors on the page, and we are addressing that one as well. But we'll release in any case today, so stay tuned for the newsletter, which probably most likely will come tomorrow, but the availability of the built-in stable will be out today. So an important milestone for us. With regards to the next release, we are still maintaining the same calendar. We'll have to see how Thanksgiving and also 1st of December it's the National Day in Romania, so the development team will have some days off. So probably this will affect timings a bit, but we'll announce it as we get closer to that time. Again, the theme for 1.18, it will be continuing on our journey to revamp the UI, improve the first-time user experience. Okay, so that's it. Without further ado, I will bring it to Dale to give us some interesting techniques from in the hands-on part.
All right, hello. Let you look at my email here first. That was really good. We'll get to that in just a second. Today in our From the Trenches segment, well, the first thing that I wanted to do is upgrade. this is the website that we were working on last week, and I started but didn't have it set up properly to upgrade. So here we go, a little bit of redemption from last week. So the within the configuration section of Plantain app, there is the updates button, and we have the one-click update available 117. And so we can see that all of our modules are either at 5.16 or 1.16. And with one click, it's going to tell us what it is that is part of the release. And we can see the enhancements, the bug fixes, the known issues that Bogdan just mentioned. All that's in there as part of the release. And so I'm just going to click the update to version 1.17 button, and it's going to go to work doing that for us. Now that's going to take a minute to do, so I'm going to transition immediately into our hands-on low coding, and we are all the way up to part 3 now. And I'll just start talking about our objectives and what we've got accomplished while that update is going on. So what we were doing is we were talking about a specific legacy application, a CRM system called Sales Logics, that's at least 15 years old. And so we were starting the rebuild of that application. And also part of our objectives in presenting this here is to use and demonstrate many of the built-in low-code features that come with Plantain app. And then today we'll be moving on to how to start the front ends and techniques that you can use as you're designing a front end. So we have our upgrade in progress. Let's look at the legacy application. This is a screenshot, shows contact information, phone numbers, some activity and history down there at the bottom listed out that's connected to the contact. And so in our previous 2 episodes, we covered doing much of that work. And so the parts that are complete, we've got our data entity set up and our management create, read, update, delete kind of functionality. We've put in the various contact form sections and the related phone numbers. Last week, we worked on continuing that back end a little bit by doing the activities and activating the search feature. And we also tried to display phone numbers as a token. We got most of the way there, through there, and I may finish that up today. We'll see. And then, so here's the plan for today. We want to start talking about building a front end, the create, read, update, delete, or CRUD as we sometimes call it, that Plantain app builds automatically is amazing. But this is oftentimes, depending on your use for it, this might be something that's on the that's a management interface and not what you'll get your end users to do. So if you want to build a front end that works the way you want it to work, to consider the needs of your end users first, then you can you'll want to build your own front end. And in that case, we'll talk about kind of a beginner's technique of how to copy from the core, create, read, update, delete that has happened. After you get comfortable with the product, you might skip that step and go directly to designing your own. But as a beginner's technique, being able to copy and modify kind of helps you move along learning the product. So we'll be facing it from that direction. We'll be doing a homepage redesign of the product because it's now sitting at the default, which doesn't reflect the application we're building. We'll add some new pages and new listings and new forms. And then we'll also talk about testing. We're going to want to set up a user to test so that we can see what our application looks like as a user, because that's going to be different than as either a low-code engineer or an admin. So we're going to get a different look to that. And then you also might want to try it on different device types, and Chrome has some nice tools built into it to do that. So I'm sure other browsers do as well. And we'll just go as far as we can, but we might get into doing a contact to detail page as well. So that's where we're headed today. let's see how far we can get. So first, I'm going to go back to our application, and after the update ran, this is what we see now. All of the applications are up to 5.17 or 1.17, and so our update has succeeded. I kind of skipped past this, but just putting my support hat on as a best practice, it's always great to have a backup of your system right before you do an upgrade. We test these extensively, but things can happen during an upgrade, and if you have a backup to revert to, that gives you some peace of mind. So always back up your database and file system when applying updates. Also, as a good practice would be to go in and look at the logs and to see what kinds of things happened in your during your update time to determine whether or not there were any issues that were related to your update. And so that's, again, another best practice. So our update succeeded. You can see that we now have the updated look and feel. We've done some work, as Bogdan has mentioned, in the last weeks. We have different things like the automation has a new interface. We've added this preview button to be able to get right to your application. We have a history button to get to your repository. So some nice interface things, but so we can see immediately without having to look very hard that we did get updated. So the first thing I wanted to do today in terms of steps to take, I've signed in as an administrator onto this site, and the reason is I needed access. I need to create a folder to hold some of the content that we're going to import and export, and so I'm going to go to my directory and the root of my directory and create a folder, and I'm going to call this the code export import folder. So this is going to be necessary in order for you to be able to export content and import it back in. So this is the beginner's technique we were talking about. The other thing we're going to want to do, and this might take just a minute, but I want to go to the users and to create a user for us to test with. Because so far all I have is the Dale Warner user, and I'm in the admins and citizen developers. I want to create a user that just has the user's role. So I'm going to send myself an email, and this will be I'm only going to assign the user's role. So we'll let that go and send us an email, and we'll go check for that in a few minutes when we get ready to do some testing. Okay. So with that, we're ready to begin. And so the first thing that I'm going to do, we'll use the preview button to get over from configuration to our site. And so this is the home page. We have the home page as a reminder where we are. We have the home page, the configuration page, which is where we do our low-code work. And then this is what we've built, these management screens that are contacts and accounts. And so, for example, if we go and look at contacts, we can see that the contacts that we've entered into the system. And after the upgrade, running a little bit slow, it'll take us, here we go, we're warmed up now. So we have our 3 contacts and the information that we're storing on them. And the main one we're focusing on, John Abbott here, we've got some activities for him and some phone numbers. So these are the management screens that we're going to leave around underneath the setup tab, but we're going to create a CRM tab and start building out our CRM. So starting with the home page, let's clean this up a little bit. One thing that we can do if we go into the edit mode on it, the default page that was provided with Plant an App exists here, and we can just delete this. So now the home page will be blank. And another thing that we're going to do is that you'll typically, you might want to use the Plant an App page builder theme but you may want to use something else. And so in our case, we're going to pick a different theme, and to keep things simple, we're going to pick the one that's included with DNN. So if we go into advanced appearance, we're going to pick the Exelon scheme, the theme that was installed. And I'm just going to pick the no title container as the default and save it. So now as we refresh our website, we see that we've switched back to Exelon. Presumably you'll have a theme that you'll either buy or design, and perhaps not use Exelon, but this will demonstrate that it doesn't have to be the Plantain app theme. So we've redesigned our homepage and left a place to put things as we go forward. Not going to do much more with that right now. Going back to our configuration, we have a pages interface. And so as I design my application, I'm thinking that I want to have a main function on the menu that is customer relationship management, or CRM. So on the site root part of pages, I'm going to click add. And this is something that is going to be visible in the menu. And the name of it is going to be CRM. That's the name of the menu option. The page title is going to be CRM relationship management. And now we work a little bit with permissions. Who can see this thing? Well, all users are people who haven't even signed on to the website. We don't want to pick that. But everyone else, our low-code engineers, our admins, citizen developers, managers, all these elevated roles, we want them to be able to see this page, and also users, people who've signed into the application can see it. Who can edit this page? Now we don't want to do our users, but all of our high-level roles we want to include in that. So people who are, for example, low-code engineers or citizen developers, probably not managers. We don't want managers to edit the page, but our developers, we're going to let them do that. So we'll click save, and that'll set up this page for us, the CRM page. And if I want to, there is the ability to move this, and I'm going to move this all the way to the top. I'm going to move it above the home, because I want this to appear even to the left of the home page. Now, this is really just for illustration that we can move things around, but that's how you move pages around on the site. So with that little bit that we've done, I'm going to click back and refresh. And so now we see we have a CRM option in the menu. That's because it was made visible. And we can click on it and it'll go to the CRM page on the site. And it's a blank slate. Notice that the title of the tab is CRM Customer Relationship Management, and that stays as part of the history in when you're viewing. So that's a good thing to think about as you're naming pages. Instead of just naming the menu option, you might want to expand on it a little bit and call it Customer Relationship Management, something useful so that people can see where they've been and maybe how to navigate back to it. So in the CRM page, this came up as Page Builder because that's the default for our site. But we're going with the Exelon theme, so we'll go into our page settings and flip that over as well. So Exelon and no title. And so that gives us the new page for where we're going to do some work here. The first thing that we want to do is to create this. I'm designing an application, right? I want to create a new page that is going to be a listing for contacts, and I want it to look like I want it to look, but I'm going to use the technique of copying from the screens that were created, the forms that were created, the grids that were created automatically for us by Plantain app. So to do that, I am opening up another window, and I hate that the number of windows might get confusing, but I'm going to go to our setup page and contacts, and I want a listing that looks much like this, but different. And so I'm going to leave this one behind, but I'm going to create a copy of it. So I'm going to go into edit mode, and actually I'm going to click again and stay in edit mode while I'm doing this kind of work. And for the listing itself, there is the ability to export content. This is a DNN feature. And so you can say export content, and this listing is going to be exported to a file that we can reuse. You have to put it somewhere. You can't leave it as non-specified. So I'm going to put it in the code export import file, folder that we created. And this is going to be the contact listing. I give it a good name so that I can find it. And so we'll click export. So now that it's exported, we can reuse it on another page, and then we'll customize it. The way that we reuse that is the listing is an action grid. So we place an empty action grid on the page. And actually, when you create a page, DNN automatically adds a HTML item that we don't need. So I'm going to delete it so it stays out of our way. So we just have our action grid left on the page. And now we can use the import content to go to the code export import folder and pick our contact listing. Notice that it automatically takes all the spaces and punctuation and everything out of that. So, but also it's going to list everything in the folder. So that's why it's important to name it as something other than just listing. And we'll click import. And so now we have the copy of this. It's completely separate from the one that Plant and App is managing for us. And as you make changes in the entity from this point forward, it's not going to be reflected in this. This is a completely different listing, and so we can modify it as we need to. So now that we have this listing, the question is, well, how do we want it to be different from the original? And great, I got a question. Could I have used the create existing module copy operation? I think so, and I'll actually try that live when I do the next module. And that would save the step of having to create an export import. So there are multiple techniques, multiple ways to be able to do things, but I'll try and do that here in the next one. So I want to manage this grid and make some changes to it to make it fit the design I have for it. I really don't need the ID being displayed in this, so I'm going to remove the ID. The full name and the account is fine, although the full name currently has a link back to our automatic thing. So we'll be addressing that as we continue our changes. But the account is good. The person's title is good. We don't need their assistant on the screen. And their email and website, that's fine. And let's say we don't need them. We can really hack this up a little bit. And then their phone numbers and activities link, we don't need those as well. So this is just, according to my design, what I would like to see on there. So I've removed those, and I go back, and now I can see the screen has become simpler. It shows the information that we need. Search and filtering still work as we needed it, but it's cleaned up quite a bit. So then we can again we're gonna clean up. We will eventually get into cleaning up this link to our own detail, because right now, if we were to open this, we can see that it goes to the core setup one linking. And actually, this is, I guess, something we can take on rather than just keep pushing it down the line. So we're going to need a new page for it to go to when you do the detail for a particular contact. I'm going to return to my configuration and my pages, and underneath, I'm going to click into the CRM page, and I'm going to create a subpage that's going to be called detail. So this again is visible in the menu. No, we don't need it visible in the menu. You're only going to get there when you click on the menu item. And so this is going to be the contact detail. And the permissions are going to be very similar. Everyone can get there except people who aren't authenticated. And we're going to let our developers work with it. And so we say save. So now we have a page for this, and we can go there. I'm going to click to open that page. And so now we see we have a CRM contact detail page. It's again came up in page builder. So let's clear that up. We'll go to page settings and pick Exelon. And refresh. Get rid of this thing that I don't like. We'll delete that. And so now we have a page. This is going to be the landing page for the CRM. So let's clean up this link. The link where it needs to go to is CRM contact detail. So I'm going to copy that and find my way back to our custom listing and edit it. So we'll manage this grid. And in the full name, where the link currently goes to set up contacts detail, I'm going to change that to go to our portal URL, CRM contact detail, and it's going to pass the ID as part of that URL. So I like to just make incremental changes and to see that things work as I'd hoped. So I'm going to go back. And so now we have our listing. And if I click in on John Abbott, it's going to the CRM contact detail page, which we haven't built out yet, but we have our contact ID of 3. And if we go to Bogdan, contact ID of 2. So we have the information necessary to show that detail, and we've cleaned up that one element. So the other elements we might need to clean up, we have an edit button here that we don't really need. We probably don't want to let them delete it from this main view, so we can clean those things up. And then you might want to let them add a new contact right here. And so this new button needs to be linked to a real form instead of the other one. So it's not linked to a form currently because we've copied this. So we'll clean that up as well. We can leave export. So these are the features we're going to address next. And so let's go ahead and take care of that. If we go to our grid and look at the things we want to clean up, we're not going to do an edit button. We're not going to do a delete button, so we can get rid of those. And the add button we need to work with. The export button we're going to leave, so all that's good. And so we'll save and go back. And so now we no longer have these buttons to the right, and that matches what we want to get accomplished. So let's take a look and actually do what Mark has suggested. We will add an existing module instead of the copy methodology. And we want to copy from our, let's see if we can find it here, the setup contacts page. And what do we want to copy? Well, we have header, listing form. The form is the new entry form. We're going to make a copy of it. So we've clicked make a copy. If we don't check this, it's not going to be its own thing. It's going to be tied to that other one, and it would not be unique. It wouldn't be suitable to modify for our purposes. So we'll pick that and drop it on the form here someplace. I'm going to put it someplace where I know. But this form is set up to display only when called upon, and so we're going to have to make some changes to it. We can't see it down here, but we can see that we can edit it, and so we'll be able to manage it. So let's the first thing that we can do is let's wire this. Let's finish up with our grid. We'll wire this new button to activate our new form. So we will manage the grid, find our new button, and do some cleanup. the new button inside, it's called Add as its name, but it's here's where the title comes from, new, and the help says that it is an Add button. We can expand on this if we want. Contact, where does it go? It's top left. It's always good to think about the style of these things so that you maintain consistency from one form to another. And this is what we consider a primary action that's going to result in that blue color, so that it will call attention to itself as one of the primary things that you do in this form. We could create an icon for it. We're not going to. We'll just clean up what's there. So the only actions that are part of this are the open, pop-up, and stop execution. And notice that there's no module selected. It lost its connection to its module because we pasted it in on some other from somewhere else. But we can just click here and select that we want it to go to the form. Now, if you've seen any of my videos, you know I don't like something named form, so we're going to clean that up as well here in just a minute. But it's the form, it's number 461, and so we can save that and go back. And so now this new button, when we click it, is going to activate our Add Contact form. And so now we'll start doing the customization of the Add Contact form to do just what we want it to do. Actually, let's take a look at it before we go. So it has all the fields on it, and perhaps for entering a new contact, we're going to have a slightly different layout, or that we want to have different fields. So we'll make some modifications there. So let's see what's behind this form and clean it up and make it work. This is the way that Plantain App has designed the form automatically, because due to what you've entered into on the entity. And so every field on the entity is represented. It's acquired. It's already wired to acquire all the data. And this particular form is set up to handle both adding and editing. And it also will enforce your rules. So we're going to simplify it some by removing the update part. This is only going to be an add form going forward, so we'll clean it up. I'm going to start at the bottom, though, because in the form events, this is the activity that takes place when the form loads. There's different phases of loading: when the page loads, pre-init, on-init. And this is where Plantain App has automatically built, let's go get all the data. So if you want to see how Plantain App goes and gets the data, this is a great way to do it. You can see what we've done. The first thing that we do is to set some values, whether or not it's in edit mode, and the name of all the fields are all initialized with blank data. And then we check to see if the form is in edit mode and adapt accordingly. Well, we're not going to handle edit mode, so I'm just going to delete this one out. This form will not be handling that. We do read contact, which is the action that says go get the contact for whatever the contact ID is in the query string. And so that's being passed in the query string. And it's creating something called original. So there'll be original first name, original title. Every field, every property will be stored in this output token. So, but this is for editing, and we're not going to edit, so we're not going to need to read the contact. And then there's some error messages that we've built in that talk about you're only able to add items if you're in specific roles. We're not going to try to manage these in this. If they have access to the button, they can click it. If it fails, if there are rules that keep them from doing it, we're not going to enforce them in advance. Part of the reason for that is that these are not going to be managed because this form is no longer under the Plantain App domain. It's a copy of a form. It's not going to get managed. And so to simplify it, I'm just not going to enforce these rules. We'll let Plantain App enforce them as a save attempts to happen. And in the same way, we don't care about editing and rules there. So we're really simplifying this section a lot. Excuse me. So the only thing that we've kept is initializing some of the fields to blank and saying that the title of this pop-up is add contact. And just to demonstrate, maybe we'll say new contract, just to demonstrate that we could change this title. It's always good to have titles that on your pop-ups that identify what's going on from a user perspective. So add new contact is what we're going to call it. There's a hidden field here that says whether or not this thing is in edit, and ultimately we're not going to use that. So I'm going to, again, I'm hacking away at this. So now we're left with the layout of the screen and what fields we're going to use. Let's say that when we're creating something new that we don't really care about who their assistant is or what their website is, so we won't be prompting for those things and we'll delete them. And type in status we will accept. And so we've simplified according to our needs what the form needs to ask for. We're going to keep an add button, and so we'll work through it. We got rid of this field, so we can't conditionalize on it, but we don't need to. It's always going to be an add on this form. And on our, as we work through the actions that were pre-built for us, there's these permission things. And again, I don't want to enforce permissions. We will allow it to create new contact and just set all of the fields according to the fields designed on the form. So this can remain. It's going to display a nice toast message that says that your data was saved. But this view details is a hyperlink, and if we take a look at it at the HTML, it's sending us back to this setup stuff that's our maintenance screens, and we don't care about that. So we're just going to remove that as part of the message. And then we want to refresh the listing that we came from. And again, this got deselected because the form was copied from somewhere else. It can only refresh things on the current page. So we'll refresh the listing. And then finally, we're going to close, and we have to correct this. What are we going to close? So we'll close our pop-up. So that's everything having to do with add that's been cleaned up. And then update, we're just not doing update, so we can delete that. So let's see if we've hacked this well. So we go back, and so now we have our customized listing. We say we want to do a new contact, so we see add new contact. Remember, we changed that. It's been simplified a little bit, so we're going to say we'll provide some information, and actually we don't have to provide information for all these things, but we'll say he is a decision maker and he is an active client of ours. And so the screen refreshes with the information that we had, and we have our hyperlink that goes down. So that is, we've created a new page, we've created a listing, we've created an add form, and we've created our contact detail page. And we've already linked to it. So now we're fast forwarding through all this. We can now go on to how do we display this information on a new page. So if we go to the detail page, and again, we haven't done the work yet, but we can see that it's linking the contact ID. We can grab we can, again, I like this suggestion, add existing module, and we'll go with setup and use the one as was provided by Plantain app. So on contacts, we just know that on the detail page, oh, there's a ton of things here. But I think what we need is the view form. And so it might help you to go and look at the page and identify exactly what one that you want to copy. But I think the view form is the one that we need. So I'm going to place it here and let it. Nope, that's probably not it. So because it didn't do anything for us. So I think we'll delete that out and go and actually explore a little bit. So back to our pre-built management screens, if we click in on John Abbott and we get to the setup page, we can see that there are what the forms are. And this is the one I was trying to copy, the one that appears on details that has John Abbott. So it's acquired all the data, it has it ready to display. We're going to make a copy of this and reformat it. So one way to learn what its name is to go into the settings of the module and see that it is the view form. So that's the one that we want to copy. So if we were to come back here and try again, add existing module, view form, and there it is. Maybe that's what I did originally and just didn't refresh. Interesting. Okay. But now I'm inspired to clean this stuff up again, as I said I would. So I'm going to go into the settings and say that this, instead of being view form, which is a little bit generic, we'll say that this is the, give things good names. We'll just take a minute to do a nice best practice here. Go back to our CRM screen and give these things good names as well. Call that the contact name listing. And for this form, this is the contact add form. Contact form. So when we rename these things, if we were to go in and look at them internally now and look at the things like on the add button where we are closing our pop-up form, notice that it automatically renames them. It was linked previously by the module number, and now it has these names. So that helps us as we identify these things, exactly what we're working with. So great, we've got better names on things. We'll go on down into John Abbott. We've got this layout. The layout doesn't look anywhere near as nice as it did. This one, yeah, this one. This one looks nice because it's been formatted with the page builder CSS file. And when we switched away to a different theme, the CSS isn't there. So we see some different text. And so this gives us something though to clean up. So here we go. So we'll go in and manage this form. First, we'll take a look at how did PlantinApp build what it did? And then second of all, what do we need to do? So again, I'm going to start at the bottom on the form events because this is where all the data comes from. We are injecting data, setting the original fields all to blank values. So that's pretty straightforward. But then we read contact. We get the contact by using the record ID that comes from the query string. So it gets the contact ID and outputs it to the original. So this gets us all of our contact data. And then this form, because it's automatically connected to other things, we're doing, we're reading the other information. So we're getting the original, using the account ID to get something called original account. So that'll read the account record. And the same way with the contact type, we're going to have original contact type and contact status. So this has acquired all the data for us so that we're ready to display information. We also have it enforcing roles. And again, I'm not going to worry about enforcing roles, so I'm going to delete that out. And so otherwise, we're going to leave all the reading of data ready for us to go. So now how did PlantinApp display it? Well, it created a static text that has all of the information in HTML. We've built up divs and classes to, instead of doing them in individual fields, we've done them in divs and classes. And so when it came time to display something, we displayed the original full name. And if it's blank, it gets a dash value. So that's a nice formatting choice. So this is what Plantain App does. I really wanted to just display them in fields. This again is a decision now for how you want your application to look, how you want your front end to look. Mark is asking the question about the prefix lettering, and that's a great question, but I will not try and answer that live. We'll find the answer and bring it in a future episode. So I'm going to leave this here for now, and then and display the fields as I want them displayed. And then when we have it all cleaned up, we'll get rid of this one, the default one that was done by Plantain App. So the first one that we're going to want to display, oops, sorry for scrolling around here, is the full name. And we could just copy this out if we want. This is where we're actually getting the full name. We could look in our read information below and find it as well. So what I want to do is to display this in a text field. So I'm going to create a text box. I am going to call it full name and give it a value coming from our context. The same original full name will get displayed. And again, like to make nice small steps and see that I'm going in the right direction, and then we'll expand. So from a layout perspective, I want this to appear on the top. Just do this one field for now, and we'll squeeze in the layout a little bit and save. And so now we can go back and take a look at what's happened. So now we have the full name and it being displayed. And because we didn't come from another page, it lost its reference. What's the contact ID? And so I'm going to go back and come into this as John Abbott. And so now we see the full name, John Abbott, and it got cut off. To avoid this, to avoid losing the URL going forward, I'm going to right-click on Manage Form and say open it in a new tab. So we'll just be able to tab back and forth and just refresh, make it easy for ourselves. So the first thing I want to clean up is this layout doesn't really work, but that's because I forgot to say that I want to have the label aligned on the top. So the labels will be on the top. We'll click save and see what that does and just refresh. So now we have full name, John Abbott, and different layout. And so now we can just go on and do these other fields, make a layout that we like. And so let's take a look at that. So we'll close this up. And the next one that we want to do, again, we can get them from here. There's other places we can get them from as well. And as a matter of fact, this is a little confusing, so I don't think I'll do any more from here. The place that I'm going to go is back to my configuration and look at entities. And I can just see the things that are a part of contact. So if I were to edit and look at the properties, I can see there's full name, account, title, assistant. So let's say we want to do title next. So we'll go to our design, and I'm lazy, so I'm just going to use the clone field button, and we'll put in title. And this again has original title with a default of blank. So and then if we go into layout, we can maybe have the title appear immediately to the right of the name. So that was pretty easy. And so now we can just refresh and see how we're doing. So we have John Abbott, president. Let's say the next one we want to do is the account name. And so now we got to look a little bit harder to find where the account name is. If we look at our data, when we read account, it's outputting something called original account. So that's what we'll need to use. And if we look in the entities for account, we can see the name of those fields, and the name of that is just simply name. So if we remembered, we wouldn't have to go all bouncing around, but we're going to look at original account name. And so again, we'll just copy a field and call it account. The place where it comes from is original account, and the property is name. This was the token that was read during on the way into the form. And that's really all we need to do. We'll again position it where we want it to be and save. And we don't have to do these one at a time, but we can get up some speed. But you can see what we're doing. We're creating individual fields for these things, and then we'll eventually get rid of this. Let's actually do that now. We no longer, let's say that that's all we want to display. Obviously, we want to pull all our fields out, but at this point, we don't want that default value that was provided by PlantinApp. So now we can refresh, and we can see that we have it just the way we want it. And because we've broken these out into individual fields, if you want a different layout, perhaps we want we want the account name on a new line. Actually, a good one might be the title to appear underneath the full name, so we can do a little bit of rearranging and dragging to make things look the way we want them to look. And so now if we were to save and refresh, we can get a different look. So that might be one reason that you would redesign your own, and other benefits of doing that. And then the final thing, I started with saying, let's do some testing. Let's have a testing account. And so I created in my new user registration. So earlier I invited myself to be part of this, and it's going to be this username here. But I'm going to open this link. The way that PlantinApp works, when you set up a new user, it sends an invitation where they set their own password. So it's making me provide my email address, and then I'm going to provide a highly secure password, which I think is test user, and I say reset. So now it's going to let me log in using that. And so now I'm coming in from the perspective of an end user. I don't see configuration. I don't see the setup stuff because I don't have permissions to it. And I do see CRM, and I can add a new record if I want. And I can view in, if I click in on John Abbott, I can see the design of that. The last thing that I wanted to point out is, and we'll probably add some navigation here. It'd be nice to have a back button other than using the back button in the browser, but lots of additional things we're going to want to do to make this a nice front end for your users, but that's the start. But from a testing perspective, if you inspect, there is, this is in Chrome, there's a toggle the device toolbar. Move this out of the way. But notice then it lets you look at this thing from the perspective of like an iPhone X. This is iPhone X in a vertical format. We can set it in a horizontal format. So this is what it would look like. We have kind of a click and drag. Does the clicking and layout work the way that we'd hoped to? So you can even as you're starting to design, you can be looking at this from the perspective of an end user. And if you're targeting either tablets or mobile devices, you can, let's see if we can find like an iPad here. So, just how big the screen is going to look. Let's bring it up to full size. And just how the thing is going to act on different devices without actually having to pull out the devices. There's also a throttling. So if you're trying to deal with performance and how much information is being transferred, you can select, for example, low-end mobile, so that you can see it'll slow down pictures, large things, and so that's a great way to test. You see that your functionality is good and your mobile devices are good as well. And with that, I'm going to go back to normal mode here and entertain any final questions about this. But we really, well, we could have built that out more. You can see how to do it. And I'm getting a couple of comments about good insight. And heck, I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, if you haven't figured that out about me yet. So I'm going to take these last 3 minutes to go and do the thing that we were doing, that I failed at last week. I was working on a workflow that would display phone numbers, and I completed that. And then I turned it into a token called a contact phone number list. And so if you provided, for example, contact ID 3 and run it, you get a nice phone number list. We can click render in HTML and you can see that it works. And so I am going to use that in our listing, in our CRM listing. We could add phone numbers into it, or probably easier, let's do it in this form here. We can just add a static text that would be phone numbers and put it here. And instead of the contact of ID of 3, we'll say the get contact ID, getting it off the query string and saving, so that now when we go into John Abbott, we get to see his phone numbers. So, okay, I hope that was, my perfectionism didn't waste your time, but I like to close the loop. Anyway, final thoughts, final questions. Bogdan, take us out of here.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Dale. Very, very thorough and very interesting. Is there a next part to this?
Yeah, I think we'll do one more after this. There's some, I think there are certainly more topics to dealing with the front end, and also some automation things that we haven't gotten to yet that I think are really quite cool. So I think we'll do that one more, not next week, but the week following, and then probably back to, we'll pick a new topic after that.
Sounds good. Well, it was very interesting going back to the basics, and I see a lot of people appreciate it. So thanks everyone for taking the time to be here. And as Dale mentioned, next week we'll skip, so we'll be seeing each other in 2 weeks from now. Bye, everyone.